Let's finish talking up about the electrical conductivity of the heart. The electrical conductivity of the heart, we actually get to measure as an ECG. We'll end up with that. But let's continue with our discussion. Remember that heart muscle cells are connected to each other, and all of the cells that make up the structure of the atrium, they are all joined together as a functional syncytium called the atrial syncytium. And all the cells that make up the ventricle are a ventricular syncytium. And you might say that all of the cells up here in the atrium, that they are kind of like a crowd of fans at a football stadium. And they're all doing the wave, except for when the cells of the atrium do the wave, they contract in this really cool ripple. And then all of the cells that make up the ventricular syncytium, which you could say all of the cells of the muscle that makes up the wall of the ventricles, they're another group of fans at a different football stadium, and they're doing the wave. And when they do the wave starts at the apex of the heart and spirals its way upward. Let's talk a bit more about that. The way that they are connected to each other, they don't see their friend next door stand up, right? What they do is that friend, that cell, has got a change in its electrical activity, and those ions go through the intercalated disc and cause this cell to do its thing. So we learned that we are going to start with the pacemaker of the heart, which is the SA node. The SA node, for reasons that are beyond the scope of AP120, are the cells of the heart that are going to spontaneously have an action potential earliest. And so they're going to be setting the tempo for your heartbeat. If your heart beats 80 beats per minute, it's because these guys are firing off at 80 beats per minute, the sinoatrial node. Now from there, the electrical activity is going to go from one heart muscle cell to another heart muscle cell across the atrium, and the atria are going to contract, right? That electrical signal is going to arrive here by traveling through all of those atrial cells. It's going to arrive here at the atrioventricular node. It's called the atrioventricular node because it's right here where the two atria meet the two ventricles, the atrioventricular node. And actually, when it gets there, it's going to slow down a little bit, and that's to give our atria a chance to contract and fill up the ventricles with blood. After it reaches the AV node, it is going to be able to go down into the ventricles. You know, the electrical activity that's happening right there in that part of the atrium, it cannot spread to the ventricles. Why? Because we don't want the ventricles contracting from the top down. If they contracted from the top down, we would just end up squeezing all the blood down in the apex of the heart. That would not be useful. So the heart is organized so that actually the atria are isolated from the ventricles, and the only way the signal can get through is by going through the atrioventricular node, who's going to hand it to the bundle of His. This little tiny area right here is called the atrioventricular bundle, or the bundle of His. From the bundle of His, it's going to go down these two bundle branches. There's one for the left ventricle, there's one for the right ventricle, and the bundle branches take that signal all the way down to the apex of the heart. Once that signal has reached the apex of the heart, it's going to start handing it off to individual heart muscle cells, and they're going to hand it off to their buddies. And so a wave is going to start down here at the apex of the heart, and it's going to start to spiral upward. But honestly, the muscle of the ventricle wall is so thick, it needs a little bit of help for the wave to progress quickly enough to create a contraction. So it gets handed off to these guys called the Purkinje fibers. And then after that, definitely from one heart muscle cell to another across the intercalated discs. So as a summary, from the SA node across the atria, arrives at the AV node, goes down the bundle of His, down the bundle branches, up the Purkinje fibers, handed from one heart muscle cell to another across the ventricular syncytium. And what does that end up looking like? I've got an image in 1 second. So the pacemaker of heart is what? Go ahead, pause the video. Pause it. Find the answer to this. What's the pacemaker of the heart? It's the SA node. And this is why we get this thing called an ECG. You can see this little blue line right here. You're used to seeing that on TV dramas and movies, right? Everyone's used to hearing that beep, beep, beep whenever the doctor's in a hospital room. Here's where it's coming from. Take a little bit of time to look at this. We're going to see that the electrical activity starts up here at the SA node, and then it spreads all across the atrial syncytium. All of these heart muscle cells that make up the muscle of the atrium, all of those together get called the atrial syncytium. And then that electrical activity will end up arriving here in the AV node. And from the AV node, it's going to zip down the bundle of His, down the bundle branches to the apex. And this crackling you see coming upward, that is going to be the Purkinje fibers carrying the signal upward. And look at how the atria contract, then the ventricles contract. Atria, ventricles. Atria, ventricles. Now, let's try to simultaneously look at what's going on here in the ECG. Do you see this little bump? That's the atria. Do you see that? That's the ventricles contracting. Do you see that third bump? The third bump is the ventricles going back to resting membrane potential. So atria contract, ventricles contract, atria, ventricles, ventricles regroup. There you go. You're practically a Grey's Anatomy resident, right? We will continue our discussion of the cardiovascular system in our next video.